Hello, my name is Charlie Minato, and this monstrosity's name is the Humidor by Marc André Centurion Santos Rosewood, and this is a requested review. There was a time in which I was reviewing a lot more desktop humidors here at halfwheel.com, and there would be a steady stream of comments, both in the text reviews and in the videos, that would say something along the lines of, quit reviewing humidors that are made of MDF and review humidors that are made of real wood. MDF is a material that is found all over the world in a variety of applications, from home building to furniture and to humidors. And it stands for medium density fiberboard. The material is like a hybrid between paper and real hardwood, like lumber. And so the way it's made is by taking really thin shavings of wood. Think like, almost like lint. It's very, very thin fibers. It's then mixed with resin and some water and some glue. It turns into this paste, which turns into a dough. And then the dough is like spread on big sheets. Heat and pressure are added to harden the dough. And then it can be cut into smaller pieces. There are many advantages to MDF. It is cheaper, or at least my understanding is it's cheaper than using real hardwood. Secondly, it's lighter than using real wood, which can also help with like shipping things and other stuff. And then in the case of humidor construction, one of the big advantages is that it is agnostic to moisture, whereas some hardwoods will absorb and release that moisture as the humidity fluctuates. And so that means the wood itself is going to expand and contract, which is not great if you're building a box structure. And that is what MDF is used for primarily in humidors. It's not used for the outside or the inside pieces that you see. It's rather the sort of box that the shell and the interior go around. So the way most humidor construction works, from my understanding, I've never built one before, is that the outside usually has thin sheets of wood. Veneers is what they're called. Sometimes they can be painted or they can have lacquer on them, and we're starting to see things like metal and carbon fiber become more popular finishes. But those are applied on top of, in the case of most humidors, MDF. And then on the inside of a humidor, this one has real wood, but a lot of them tend to use veneers, Spanish cedar veneers, so very, very thin, almost like multiple sheets of paper stacked on top of one another, just put on top of that MDF. Some humidors, nicer humidors, will use thicker pieces of wood, like this one does, but the MDF is typically what's in between. Not in the case of this humidor. Marc André is a German-based humidor manufacturer that claims to not use any MDF, or they have some fancy German word for it. And that's what this humidor is made out of, and after 2.5 years after purchasing it, it's time to review it. But first, a costume change. Marc André is a person, and in 1998, he launched his eponymous company. It did not start out selling humidors. Instead, it started out as what I would describe as a humidor supply house. So he was selling products for people that were like him and wanted to build their own humidors or improve their humidors. And so he was selling things like solid Spanish cedar and hinges and hygrometers and humidifiers. And that actually continues to this day. You can go on the company's website and buy pieces of Spanish cedar to use in your humidor or to make a humidor out of. But eventually, he launched his own line of humidors, and they are sold today under the Century name. There are 4 different models, the smallest of which is the Century Legion, which is rated to hold 50 to 60 cigars. This is the 250 cigar model. It is known as the Century Centurion. Then there is the Century Emperor, which is like a countertop display humidor, rated to hold 450 cigars. And then there is a single door cabinet humidor that is rated to hold up to 2,000 cigars. All of the humidors are made in Germany, and none of them use MDF. This particular model is sold in more than 30 different exterior finishes. I believe they're all the same size, both inside and outside, just the materials change. Prices range anywhere between 1,795 euros to just about 2,500 euros. This particular model is on sale today for 1,995 euros, which is around 2,500 USD as of the middle of October 2025. As far as the dimensions go, it's a very large humidor. It looks a lot larger in person, and there's not much of a way I figured out to sort of convey how imposing this is. But I can give you the sort of raw specs. So exterior-wise, it measures 19 and 3/8 inches from here to here. And then depth-wise, it's 14 and a quarter from here to here. Height-wise, when closed, is 8 and 3/8 from here to here. When opened up and on the inside, the width of the humidor, so that would be from here all the way to here, is 16 and 3/4 according to my notes. It is 12 and 7/16 inches deep from here to here, and 7 and a quarter inches in terms of the height, the usable height of the inside of the humidor. And for those wondering, it is just over 20 inches tall when opened. That is a very important measurement because you're going to need to figure out where you can actually fit this thing. Now, As far as like the operation of the humidor goes, it's going to look pretty familiar. There's just like a different twist on sort of everything about it. Most notably, probably this tray. So rather than using the sort of standard dividers that you see on most humidors, the removable mahogany tray has this peg system. These are 12 millimeter tall pegs. They have small rubber O-rings in the bottom of them. And there are 272 per my count of these pegs, or these holes for these pegs to go throughout the humidor. At the bottom, there are more pegs, and these attach to the bottom via magnets. Interestingly, the bottom of the humidor is magnetic, or can be is metal, I guess. Whereas the top of the humidor does not have the metal properties, and so the magnets do not work. In the back, you can see the electronic mocked humidifier. I'll have a lot more about that in a second. And, you know, kind of everything else is pretty much the same. On the outside, the only thing that would be like sort of note is that on the back here, there is a built-in plug for that mocked humidifier. More on that later. I have a standardized testing procedure that I use for all of the desktop humidors that I review here at halfwheel.com, and the Dur Humidor by Marc André went through that. I'd like to tell you more about it, but I do need to move this video along, otherwise I could be here for 45 minutes. So if you want to check out the graphs and some of the raw data, go to halfwheel.com. The written review has got all that stuff and more, as well as some of my thoughts on it. Instead, I'm going to give you 3 highlights. Number 1, this thing showed up, probably didn't need to be seasoned. I did season it. I'd always recommend seasoning any wooden humidor or humidor that's got wood inside of it. It's better to be safe and precautionary up front rather than finding out you got dry wood, but just based on the relative humidity inside the box as well as the moisture content of the wood itself, it seems like it was probably okay if I just stuck cigars in upon arrival. Number 2 is that the humidor, the box itself, worked very well. No complaints. The data bears it out, shows that it's an awesome performing humidor in that regard. Number 3 is that the electronic mocked humidifier is complex. It's not difficult to use per se, but it was brand new. I certainly had never used it before. It came with an extremely detailed instruction manual, which is very much appreciated. But I think that part of the test I screwed up because I didn't know what to expect from the mocked humidifier. And after using it for another 18 months after the sort of testing procedure was done, I feel a lot more confident that if I had to do this test over again, the data would be a lot better because I wouldn't make the same mistakes that I did at the time. This review has taken a lot longer to publish than I originally expected, and that's because it's really 2 reviews in one. I've mostly been focused on the humidor, the box itself, but this is the electronic humidifier, and it deserves some time in the spotlight. This is the mocked humidifier, which stands for Marc André Cigar Humidifying Technology. And when I placed the order for the humidor back in March of 2023, this thing had not been announced, and I did not know about it, and I was not planning on receiving it. However, shortly after ordering it, I, and presumably anyone else that had an outstanding order at the time from the company, got an email saying you have 2 options. Option 1 is we can proceed as normal. You can get your humidor quickly or quicker than option 2. It will come with what we described and it will cost what you've already paid. Option 2 is you can wait a little bit, pay a little bit more. The company prorated a little bit of it, and we will ship the unit with our yet to be announced new advanced humidifier. And I went with option 2. And I'm glad that I did because it gives me the opportunity to review what's a pretty impressive product. The design brief for this was that Marc André wanted to take a lot of the features that are available on cabinet humidifiers or cabinet humidors, the humidifiers that are used. So those big things that are in the background over there. And he wanted to bring it to a desktop humidor application, something this size. And that's how he came up with the mocked device. Hi, Lexi. And so it is a 2-piece design that comes apart in the middle. I'm going to start with this section over here, which is the reservoir section and the much simpler of the 2. So up front, there are 5 horizontal slots. Some of them are covered by these silicone pieces. These are air vents, so you can help direct where the humidity goes. Over here, there are these 2 circles. That's where the fans go from the other side of the unit that I'll get to in a second. There are 2 magnets on the back, and that's how this thing attaches to the wall of the Centurion humidor. And then there are 2 knobs right here. Those knobs are undone, and this is how you refill the reservoir. And so, interestingly enough, it uses foam, which I was a little bit disappointed by because I thought we were getting away from foam in humidifiers, especially ones that are 600 euros and advertised as being super advanced. But it makes sense. If you don't want to have like just a water tank somewhere in the humidor, there are only so many options you have for a material that can absorb water and then use it later as humidity. And foam makes sense, I guess, Marc Andre says the reason why I went with foam is that it's very cheap to replace. And so this is a part that it expects you to have to replace every couple of years as the foam sort of degrades and gets nasty. And in that aspect, it makes tons of sense. It's a lot easier to replace this than having to, like buy a whole new water tank. On the other side of the unit is really where sort of the fun stuff's going on. So as you can see, there's a screen right here. There are 3 buttons. I'm going to press the one over here to turn the unit on. You hear it beep now. You'll probably hear the fans kick in. And in a second, it's going to beep at me because it's not plugged into the wall. It does have a battery. More on that in a second. So screen, there are a few different numbers going on there. There's the target humidity, so what I've set the unit to be at, the current actual relative humidity, and so that's what the sensor, the one thing with the big do not touch warning on it, is measuring on the outside air. There is the temperature reading, and then there is a notification that says it is in fact running on battery power, as well as a much larger number that I think is counting down the seconds until the battery will die. There fortunately is a button to turn the alarm off, and I'm going to hit that right now. And I appear to have hit the alarm off button a little bit too aggressively. So there is an icon on the screen there that indicates that it's currently on battery power, as well as a countdown that I think is displaying the amount of seconds that it has until the battery dies. I have not primarily run this unit on the battery. I've kept it plugged into the wall. The battery is, as far as I can tell, there to sort of protect the electronics and the unit in case of a power loss, and not really there to be used as like a, if you want to fully run this thing on the battery. On the other side, there are 2 power ports. One up here is for the DC power. Let's see. Plug it in over here. And the other option is, bless you, is a USB micro port down there for another sort of power source. Over here are the aforementioned fans that go to the reservoir tank. And beyond that, everything is kind of within the menu system itself, which is very option full. There are lots of different things that can be adjusted. Should probably plug this in before I get that notification again. And you can adjust things like how long do you want the fans to run when they kick on? How much humidity do you want? How do you want the fans to run as just an air circulation mode? There's an option to convert this over to like a dehumidifying device. I did not take the company up on that. You need to order something when you order the unit itself. Lots and lots of different features. Very detailed instruction manual. The best thing going for this is that the screen can be displayed in English, so you don't have to worry about having to pull out your phone to convert it from German, which is a very, very nice feature. One other awesome feature is that if you do buy this as a standalone unit, which you can do, you can ship your humidor, an existing humidor, to the company, and they will retrofit the wiring in the professional manner that it is on their own humidors. I assume that that's not available to American consumers, but if you're in Europe, especially if you're in Germany, that is an awesome, awesome feature. It's done free of charge, I assume, with the exception of shipping. So that's the humidifier itself. It works very, very well. I have one minor complaint of it, which is that the reservoir does need to get filled at a rate that's a little bit more frequent than I'd like it to be. I found 4 to 6 weeks was kind of the standard. I'd love for that to be longer. One good news is that if the company figures out a way to add more moisture capacity to the reservoir, it presumably could just make a new reservoir and sell that as an upgrade, and you wouldn't have to replace this piece, which I imagine is the bulk of the €600 price point. And so that's a nice part of having it as a 2-part design. On to the pros and cons section, and I'm going to start with the positive things to say. And number one is that it's pretty clear this humidor was designed by someone who really cares about humidifying cigars. So take, for example, the tray. A lot of humidors, desktop humidors, have trays. I'd venture to guess like half the humidors I've reviewed have had some sort of removable tray. This one is a bit different. Sure, it like stores loose cigars and you can fully remove it from the humidor. That's the same basic features as any other tray, but it looks a lot different. The most notable feature is the peg system and the nearly 300 holes that are there for the peg system and ventilation to be used. The peg system is great. Now, after owning a humidor that has it, it's going to be difficult to like look at the next humidor down the road and be like, like I'm just going to use these normal horizontal slats going forward. And especially for a humidor of this size, the peg system makes a lot of sense. Most humidors, you couldn't fit a cigar like this. This is a Grand Corona or an A-size cigar, but it fits nicely inside of the tray right there. But there are other parts of this tray, including the material it's made from, that are interesting and only sort of come about from someone that really cares about humidifying cigars. This is mahogany and not Spanish cedar. And Marc André says the reason why the company uses mahogany instead of Spanish cedar is because there is some risk of having loose cigars come into contact with Spanish cedar. I suspect that what the company is referring to is this thing I'll call sap. I don't actually know if it's sap, but Spanish cedar has this ability to produce this sticky substance that sort of protrudes out from the wood. I don't really know what causes it or why some Spanish cedar has it and others doesn't. I've had it happen in the past. It's this very sticky substance, and if it gets on the wrap of your cigars, it definitely will damage the cigars. But there are other like small features. One thing to note is that the tray doesn't run the full length of the humidor. Instead, it only goes partially through. And that's because in this back section is where the mocked humidifier lives. And so instead of having the tray fully cover it, even with like the whole system, right? Instead, there's just a vent cover here to help better promote air circulation throughout. So number 2 on the pros and cons list is just the execution. This is a very, very well-made humidor and humidifier. It's very, very impressive. It, in person, is much more substantial than I think it looks even here on video. It's not flashy. A couple of years ago, the term quiet luxury really became in vogue, and I think this definitely embodies it. It certainly embodies at least a school of like German luxury as to I understand it, where it's a bit more subtle than it is in some other places in the world. And this very much is that. It's not as flashy as like the lacquered exteriors of a lot of other humidors, but once you get close to it, and certainly once you open it up, I think you would very much feel that this is a different caliber of humidor than most of the other humidors. Even for somebody like me that's owned dozens of desktop humidors, it was pretty apparent from the start that this was a little bit different. And everything is just built very, very well, very clearly not only thought out, but also, again, the execution there. And number 3 is that humidifier, the mocked humidification system. I have a bit more quibbles with it, one more that I haven't mentioned so far that I'll mention in a second. But overall, like, mission accomplished. It's advertised as more or less like the most advanced desktop humidifier that's ever been made, and at least in my experience, I haven't seen anything that really comes close to it. I don't know how relevant all of it is or how important all of it is, and Marc André itself even like makes this mention on its website, at least in German, where it says not everyone wants to have all of these advanced features and the price tag that comes along with it. And so it still sells the Hydro case, which is its more basic humidifier, for those people who don't want all of the menu options that exist with the mocked system. So sticking with the humidifier, but now moving on to the con section, I do have one more issue with the humidifier. You saw it actually on camera earlier, which is that I couldn't turn the alarm off all that easily. I had to like eventually just power the unit off and recycle it. That has happened before. Now, granted, it didn't happen in the 7 bad takes before the one that you just saw, but it's happened certainly over the last 2 years, every once in a while. And I don't know, like that would be one area of improvement, perhaps more important than the reservoir, of just like making it a little bit easier and more responsive to the commands. It shouldn't be that difficult to hit the button that's labeled alarm off to turn the alarm off. Now, on to something that's probably more substantial, and is also like a pro and a con here, but I do think it's something that you really need to take seriously if you're considering buying this humidor, and that is the size of it. It's extremely large, which I keep repeating, but it's so large that it's a bit cumbersome in terms of placement. So if you do use the mocked humidifier, you're going to need to make sure that it's near an outlet, which is already going to be a limiting factor. But then you're going to have to find a piece of furniture, presumably, unless you put it on the floor, to place this. And this is a massive humidor, and it's a little bit larger even than the dimensions suggest. So I have it here at the office on this credenza, and it fits on the credenza just fine. However, when I go to open up the humidor each time, I need to pull it forward a few inches, so that way when the lid opens up, it doesn't smash into the wall and damage itself. And it's things like that, when it's this big, that you really have to take into account. My recommendation would be to try to make a model essentially out of cardboard and place that like wherever you think this thing is going to go, because I think you'd be surprised just how large it is. And the final thing won't apply to some of you, but is going to apply to most of our audience, and that's if you're in the US, you should know that, at least to my knowledge, the company does not directly ship to the US. I asked Marc André in March of 2023, or perhaps February, but before ordering it, I asked the company, hey, do you ship to the US? And they said no. The way that I purchased this was to have it shipped from Marc André to a parcel forwarding service in Germany, which then put it in its warehouse for a couple days and then shipped it to me. There were actually 2 packages at the time because the humidor and then the humidifier came in separate packages. I don't know if they now just come in one box, but I don't know. It cost 150 euros at the time. I don't know how much it would cost now. There's also the whole tariff thing that you might have to worry about. But the thing that I would be much more concerned with is that if something were to go wrong, I would not expect Marc André, the company, to do much of anything, especially like if the humidor shows up damaged. That is between you and whatever service, probably DHL, maybe UPS, but like the courier service and then the parcel forwarding company, like that is not a Marc André issue. They're out of their responsibility once the thing has been delivered. And given that this is not a $200 humidor, I would just keep that in mind. The company, for the most part, communication was in German from them. I replied in English. They had no issue with that. They had no issue with me using a US billing address. They had no issue with the parcel forwarding service. But just know it's not a normal buying experience because they're not really trying to sell this thing to American consumers. If you take nothing else away from this review, just know that I guess, self-appointed humidor and all things humidification reviewer here at Halfwheel, oftentimes find myself reading comments on the internet from people who are having issues with their humidors or humidity problems, and just think to myself, if you ever went to a cigar factory and saw how these things were made, you would have a lot less stress in your life about your problems where your Bovida packs are 69%, but your hygrometer says it's 73. There are so many variables that are outside of these boxes that we store cigars in, but these boxes are very important. It's just sometimes people get overworked about them. That said, it warms my heart that there is somebody in Germany who is clearly passionate about not just humidifying the cigars, but also trying to improve how we humidify cigars. The idea of philosophically saying just because something works doesn't mean it can't be improved. That is very, very evident in this Der Humidor by Marc André Century Centurion Rosewood Santos. No, Santos Rosewood. That's what happens when your name is too long. Anyways, I don't know if this is the best humidor in the world because I've barely reviewed a fraction of a percent of humidors that exist. I can tell you that amongst the humidors that I have reviewed, this is the most impressive one. It's not particularly close. It is very evident that the person who designed this humidor had a passion for trying to make things better. I do wish that these were available in the US, especially at stores, so people could spend 15 minutes with them. I understand that at $2,500 today's money, that it's a product that's going to be unaffordable to a lot, if not most cigar smokers. And so it would be great if somebody could see one in a store and just understand that there are, as they say, levels to this, but that the levels aren't just all flashy paint jobs and gold-plated accessories, that some of the investment that you could make in a luxury humidor is done in the pursuit of trying to actually improve the experience for the cigars inside of the wooden box. And so I can overwhelmingly say that if you are in the market for a humidor of around $2,000 to $3,000, a desktop humidor, that you should absolutely consider Marc André, even if you have to jump through some parcel transit hoops to get it. If you'd like to read more humidor reviews, you can check out halfwheel.com, where you also can read accessory reviews from Brooks Whittington, who reviews cutters, Patrick LeGreed, who reviews lighters. All three of us review cigars, and we also write about the premium cigar industry on a daily basis, all at halfwheel.com.